Hello there, it's me again. Welcome back. I have to apologize for the last video. Well, nobody's watched it yet, so maybe I don't need to apologize. But I was quite brief, and I didn't really explain exactly what I did. I just wanted to give a little demonstration of the thing working. So actually, I can do that now. Back, and then I can just remove the last one. And that was the horse animation. I added a little system menu to it with a minimize button. And then I made a few changes, which allowed me to use the system tray class, or structure, or whatever it is you want to call it. I think that's something else. It should automatically go to the new project. I also fixed another bug that you may have noticed and wondered about, to do with handling the little X button here. I didn't have any handling for that, as it turns out. So okay, so I added some handling for that, so that program could exit gracefully. If you had noticed in the video when I ran it, I closed it using the X button. The program didn't close; it was still running. There was no window. So now this is obviously using the system tray in its way. And the first time I ran it, and the first time you run any of these things, if you're using the how do I put it? The latest improvements to the system tray, then the first time you run your program, it'll work perfectly, but the next time you run it, it won't work at all. And that's one of the major improvements they've added to the operating system. And in order to get it back, you got to go into this little customize here. Now, mine is just full of all kinds of stuff because this menu here it doesn't work exactly correctly. In any case, you see, like this says to tray, but this also says to tray. So there are more than there are many entries for the same program. Here, systman any video converter, and you might find some other systmans in here. Anyway, the one good thing about this thing, okay, I do have something good to say about it, is that you can turn some of the ones that you definitely don't want in there off. Suppose I never hide. Okay, now this is a mess, really. I really don't want that there, and I don't want that, and I don't want that, or that even, unless the power's off. I don't even want that one, really. It doesn't tell me much. I only want the ones, really, that I might click on. So it does have that part, but the default should be on, and I don't know how to change that. Maybe there's some way to change the default. Then you would go into here to turn it off. And if anybody knows, please let me know. Right. So you may think that if you were running this code, if you went and downloaded downloaded what I have, or copied what I had as I'm typing and tried it, and found it only worked once, so that's the reason. Because it only does work once unless you specify that you want it to always work. Alright, now, here's the thing. And actually, this is a big point, because I'm not... here's a question, and I don't really know the answer. I'm going to find out the answer right now as you're watching this. First, is this a top-level window? Fine. It's a window, that much you can be sure of. Is it a top-level window? Now it's coming, so it's on the same level as this. So therefore it is a top-level window. Alright? Okay. Now when I run my current version of systman, you'll notice that it's not listed in here. Now this is supposed to give me a list of all the visible top-level windows. Now I'm not sure if that's a bug with my code, as in it may be that if I find a window, even if it's top level and visible, if it does not have an icon, maybe I won't draw it, or maybe there's an insertion and returns or something like that. Because it turns out that the way I've been retrieving these icons well, I'll just show you the code. I grabbed this code, probably not from myself, because it doesn't look like the way I would have written it. And I'm not trying to impress or anything. It just doesn't look like something I would have written. Where is it now? Oh, wrong file. This one. I added this just today. The way what I've been using is a function called get window icon, which I don't remember ever writing it. And that takes a handle to window and returns you a handle to icon. Okay. Now, the first thing it does is there's a send message, WM get icon to icon small, and that's one reason why I think I probably wouldn't have written this. Because I know send message is always a danger, especially when you're going through the entire list of windows. Send message is a dangerous call because it may never return, right? Now these functions are okay to call because that's just querying some data structure, global data structure. But these functions involve passing a message through the window procedure of a window, and as I mentioned before, those are marshaled calls. All appearing in the same thread context, and if it so happens that the call, the main thread that all of the messages are marshaled into is blocked, then it'll never return. This follows by logic. So that's why I thought maybe I didn't write this, and I may have copied it from somewhere else. And now the method is looking for a small icon, usually program has an icon, can have big and small icons. It could have all sorts of icons. But when you call the special wm-get icon, or when the window procedure receives a wm-get icon message, I assume that message, you can check the help, I assume that refers to the icon that's associated with the application or the window. Like your program could have hundreds of icons in it, but only one of them is displayed here in the corner. Now let me see. The system displays the large icon in the Alt Tab. This is getting out of date. Alt Tab dialog. This is the Alt Tab dialog. So the large icon is this thing, according to what that says. Okay. Now, be careful here. Now, if you look at this program, right, there is an icon here, and it is in the list, and it is displayed there. Okay, so that has an icon, but going back to our horse there, it's in the list here. Well, it does have an icon displayed here, but it's not shown on the window itself for some reason. So that's the large icon for this. I assume that if I'd sent a message get icon, it would return me that funny looking icon, that horrible looking one, and it's still not there though. Now I have to look at the actual code, which is in here, and see if that's the reason why. But I'll do that later. In the meantime, when I first ran this thing, of course, I wasn't calling this. I was using the method that we already had. And the method we already had for getting the icon to put in here was something along these lines. Now, what was that? It was in the set tray icon. Alright. And this, it turns out, this failed from my dialog. Well, I know that I have an icon in my program, so what I did was I just added an optional H icon if you want to set the icon with an H icon. In fact, that's really what this thing should only do. It's you give it an H icon, and then it just sets that as the thing to go in here. However, I want to leave it like this, as it is, with possible bugs, because I want to see what happens, with the way it is now. This here. So what I had then was an optional H icon extension to all of these functions. So nothing else had to change. And then for the dialog, and it's an it dialog, I just use the Windows API load icon function and pass in the identifier for the icon. The program has an icon, and you can call a function load icon and it takes a module handle and an identifier, and that works. And that was what you saw working. Now you'll notice that I've removed that again. Now it's automatically finding the icon yet again. That automatic detection, extraction of the icon is being done by this new function I just added, in fact today, which is the thing I want to keep. I want to keep using this, even though it may not be right, because I'm just curious. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Here, this is a PDF file, okay? Now this is one case where the icon here, this is one of the rare cases where the icon that appears here is not the same as the one that appears here. And in this list, the icon that's taken out of the window class, right, is the window icon. Now that's this picture. So when I send that one to the tray, I get the white picture, right? Now this get application icon just takes the first icon it finds in the executable resource and uses that one. Now what I could do is, just for fun, I could just change that to always just use the just for a test. And just return this. Copy it. No, I would need the module handle though, that's the problem. I would need the H module of that thing. But I think it's possible to get that. Let me pause this and try and figure that out. Okay, I'm going to try it this way. If you recall, one of the Microsoft examples, I think it was able to extract the H instance of the program associated with a given handle to window. So now I can use that, cast that as an H module, and then try this get application icon, and I have my to tray, and we can try that to tray. I'll load that program up again. This is a good book, by the way. You should read it. Really great science. Debug unit program. It should have Fountainhead in its name. Yeah. So it doesn't have a resource. This particular program, maybe I'm going to go with that, doesn't have a resource in it. That's unfortunate. You don't have to. You don't have to take the icon resources and put them inside the executable file. Assuming that H module and H instance are one and the same. Are they? Another pause. Okay, according to this, they're the same. They were different at one point in the past, but now they're the same. That makes sense. Because in the 16-bit days, we could use the same. What they would do is, since you could change the segment registers, right? You could associate an instance of a program with its data segment. You change the data segment, right? And like if I ran Notepad twice, it wouldn't load another copy of Notepad into memory. All it would do is say, allocate me some memory for my data part, and then jump into the same code, and its data segment would have changed. That data segment would be like my instance data, but the module would be the program located, the binary thing. So that makes sense. Alright then. So unfortunately that's not a good example. Yeah, right, so now the way that was working was trying to extract first I got the H instance. I'm not sure that succeeded. The assertion said that there were no icon resources in the module. I could run it up to, well, it's not important. The thing is, remember, a dialog, as I've mentioned before, is a special kind of class, a system-defined class, and therefore the class data wouldn't have an icon associated with it, right? Because a dialog box might be associated with any program, and you wouldn't want to give them all an ugly looking icon or something. If you're going to associate an icon with a dialog box, all you can do is put the icon in your executable resource and use that as the icon to be displayed here. And then that's what that animate thing does. There's no chance here for me to set the class icon, right? But the program itself has an icon, and that's what gets displayed here. And then when I want to get an icon in here, I can't take it from the window because the window has no icon. So I've got to take it from the program. So I use that. In fact, the same code. Alright. So that was one thing I had to change, and what else was there? I think that was about it. And I templatized the systemman part. It looks the same in this scenario. Right, the code's the same, so I just made a template. This template. So derives from system manager, has the container bit, and that's the same as I described. And it turns out that I have to add another friendship thing, so I decided better to just group these three lines that you have to write down into one line. And in fact, I could include this, but I want this visible. I want people to be able to see this part. This is internal handling. although this is private, it's something that the user of this thing needs to know about. So you don't want to hide that in here. Also, the user needs to use mmanager, so I wouldn't want to throw that into a macro either. Whatever the user needs to know should be all they can see. Here it says, okay, does some standard something. Here's the thing I got to implement. Here's the thing I got to use to do something. I mean, you might ask yourself, what other things are there in this structure that you could possibly have to use? No, that's the window version. The dialog versions are exactly the same. And now it's starting to look like, gee, it sure would be, it sure would be convenient if both of these dialog and window derive from a common class, and maybe I'll do that one day, and it's starting to look like that. There's enough commonality between the two that I might be able to find a middle ground where they can branch off. But not yet. Now, what I wanted to talk about in this section is owner-drawn list boxes. So that's the first thing I wanted to do before continuing on with completing the project. So in my unit test program, I happened to notice that, if you recall, I created a dialog thing to help me with virtual dub. I couldn't handle dealing with their file open dialog, and I built the framework for that dialog in this unit test, and it's still there. So I decided, okay, now here's an example where I'm using a list, right? The structure contains a list box, right? So here's a good place for me to just try out and see if I can do an owner-drawn list box. Well, the answer is yes, I can do it, and it doesn't require any subclassing of anything or anything fancy like that. I went to the resource area, and I looked at the properties of this, and then I went over to that setting, owner draw fixed. I changed that to fixed, and it took me a while to realize it didn't seem to be working for a while. Like at first I ran it before doing that, and it filled out the dialog with a bunch of file names. And then I ran it again, having forgotten that I just changed that setting, and it was empty. Well, duh, it's empty because I'm supposed to draw them. So then I went to look at the other code and see how that drawing works. Again, this must be code that I must have copied this from somewhere. Because first off, I noticed immediately that these two lines are the same. And if you may have noticed yourself that these two lines are also the same here. Now, why would you put two lines that are identical twice? There are two. Well, I thought that there's only one possibility, and that would be that this code was copy pasted down here, right? But that may still be the case. But when I looked up this function, what I found out was the way this function works is it's an XOR type function. Where does it say that? See, it's an XOR function, so if you call it a second time with the same parameter, then it'll erase. If you XOR and then XOR again, you get the same thing back, right? You get what you originally had back. So the reason why, maybe the person just was half asleep or something, but it doesn't matter if you're getting the focus or losing the focus or whatever, you do the same thing because it's an XOR. But now I looked at this code and I thought about it for a minute. First I left a comment here saying, well, try and figure this out. And then I realized that, well, if it's an XOR thing and I'm being told to draw a focus rect, right? Then all I should do is draw a focus rect. There should be no handling. Like this part, there shouldn't be anything here. Okay, we've already been told, we're being told how to draw this thing. That the thing is telling us what to draw exactly. It says draw a focus rect, so we draw a focus rect, and that's it. That's the end of the story. If there are no more items, then we leave. Now I added some functions to my the context thing, my wrapper around device context, to do some of these things. Another thing I realized looking at this was there's no need for all these rectangles, right? We only need one rectangle. All this, except for maybe the icon. But without an icon, we don't need to shift any text. Certainly we don't need to change the top position of the text, and I'll tell you why in a minute. First, I thought, well, a convenient place to store that rectangle would be in this DC struct, so we never have to worry about it again. Now there's this, there are some fill-rect calls, and they use these sys colors, which are just indices, just numbers. So I decided to just, again, just take these two lines and group them together in here, and call a function called fill-rect syscolor, which takes a syscolor index. Now I haven't really checked the meanings of these flags, but highlight color and window color. This is the color for a highlighted item, I suppose, and this is the regular color for a non-highlighted item. And then we're meant to draw some text transparently over top of the box that we just drew. If it's selected, I use the system-defined highlight text. So we got highlight color, that's the color of the background for a highlighted thing, and then highlighted text, so that's the foreground color for a highlighted thing. Now there's a special color for disabled thing, and then there's regular color for regular. Next, ID one has been given an item identifier, which now I added this square bracket operator just now. If I could make something called get text, which would be clearer, but it turns out I already have a function called get text, and it doesn't work this way. It takes a parameter, and I didn't want that, so I quickly put in these square brackets, and I'll probably remove it later and just change the get. Try to think of another way to say get text that looks like something assignable. Okay. Now, see, this says V center, so we don't need a new rectangle. I mean, we might have to move the text over to the right, but we don't need a new rectangle for the text itself because it's going to be centered. Now then, draw text, skipping over all that stuff. Here's the icon stuff I just didn't do. Draw text again. Now I've still got that rectangle in my DC thing here, so I don't need to pass that in. Draw the text using format and whatever DT calc rec, whatever that is. Probably don't need it. Draw text. I don't know what that is. Calc rec. Like, why are there two draws? I could remove one and see what it might be, a type of shadow thing. But let me just show you the result. It should go to the debug output directory once the file's there. Okay, so it's definitely drawing. Nothing's selected or anything. And when I click on things, you'll notice it's working fine. One thing you will also notice, I've been noticing recently, well, it didn't seem to do it that time, but sometimes I notice that there's see, because this person is, whoever wrote that code, it couldn't have been me, thinks that they have to think about when to draw a focus rec. It gets out of sync. I can get it back in sync, but only if I click on that. See, everything's fine now, but here the system has asked us to draw a focus rec I don't know where it asked. It must have asked to draw a focus rec here, right? Now this thing is probably drawing two things. It's probably saying, okay, now we've got to get rid of the last one by drawing a focus rec here, right? And then draw another one. So that's going to remain there until it thinks now that that's just a bug. Dumb bug. And a bug from overthinking. Now, as far as I can tell, that's all there is to drawing, an owner drawing Listbox. We want to add more things. We add icons or whatever. We can do that. There were those other messages. I'm not sure if it needed any handling. Compare and measure item. I don't know what this thing does for operation. One searcher. Icon, right. Another item track. Oh, I see. Apparently this is called that. I don't think we need that. Oh, I see. Maybe if our lines are too small to fit the icon, like we know icon height already, right? And this thing is already decided for itself. That was bolded, wasn't it? Already decided for itself what the height of each individual item is going to be, but I guess it queries the program before sending any messages about what the height of the line should. Should it use the default line height, or should it be a different value? And this program appears to be setting the height to the height of the icon to make sure there's enough room for the icons in the list. So this height might not be the default. Well, it does appear to be the default. Although the icons themselves don't look very good the way they've drawn them. Not like Explorer, wonderful Explorer. Find something that has a list of things. And well, those are icons. Notice how the focus rec in this case actually includes the icon, whereas this thing doesn't. And it's doing that on purpose, right? So I think one should include the icon within the focus rec and just draw it. And icons have transparency, so the blue will appear underneath it, just as it does here. And maybe if we adjust the style properly, things with lots of icons, we could make it look more like this. And that would be that's a lot prettier, you know. It's much smoother. It's got rounded edges, and that looks a hell of a lot nicer than this. This is horrible. So we can actually improve on it. As far as text, that's solved. There's nothing to it at all. You simply, it tells you what to do. If it says do that, do that. If this is less than 0, don't do anything else. It tells you what the item's state is. It tells you what the action, I guess, is being performed, what the action being performed is. So, okay, like perhaps, I doubt it though. Come in separately. So one thing perhaps is being selected, and one thing is being deselected. That's the way these list things usually work, unless it's multi-select. In such cases, if I select a new item when one was already selected, then it's going to redraw the first thing. And how's it going to do that? It's going to ask it to, draw a focus rec, which will erase the focus rec and draw it in its regular normal state. And then it's going to call it back again for the selected one and say, please draw a focus rec, which will draw a brand new focus rec, and then draw the thing with the right color. Then we're going to add the icon. Okay. So that's it. See you. Oh, I didn't really show you my wallpaper, but it's not a smoking woman. Plus, nobody seems that much interested in that subject anymore. Alright, see you.